tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled is author Judy Lewis and record producer Bob Biggs. Judy Lewis is a woman of today. She has, along with motherhood and being a wife, tackled 3 careers: actress, author, and therapist. She's a native Californian. Judy went to Marymount High School and graduated from Antioch University with a Bachelor of Arts degree. She's acted on Broadway and in television serials. She's a producer and an award-winning writer. Judy Lewis is with us today to unfold her life through her pocketbook publication of Uncommon Knowledge. Where should we start?
I'm thinking, did I do all of that?
Should we start with your adoption, since that's what we're really going to talk about?
I think we should start at the beginning, Joan.
And that was it.
That was it, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that, because Uncommon Knowledge is uncommon to you or to the public?
Exactly. No, I picked the choice of the book, Uncommon Knowledge, because my history, my birth, and who I was, and my parents were common knowledge to everybody in Hollywood, and it was uncommon knowledge to me. My mother is Loretta Young, and my father is Clark Gable, and my mother raised me as an adopted child, and I didn't know that my father was my father until long after he was dead.
So you tell the whole story?
In the book, yes.
Well, how did you get people to cooperate with you? How did you, I mean, you must have done a large amounts of research.
Well, I did. I really did. I had to go back into libraries and talk to a lot of friends, most of my friends that I grew up with. And of course, the first question I said is, why didn't you tell me? Jack Haley, Gary Crosby,
your peers.
My peers, yes.
And
everybody knew. Everybody knew. Susan Kohner knew, you know, all the children of Hollywood that I grew up with knew the story.
Well, do you think it was just gossip? Or do you think that they, did they think it was gossip at the time?
No, they didn't, Joan. It was, the Hollywood of the 30s, you know, is a whole different world than the Hollywood of the 90s. Today, if an unmarried woman got pregnant by her leading man, my father was married at the time and my mother was not married, she was single. And in those days, had that become common knowledge, both careers would have been destroyed. So my mother had me in secret, kept me hidden, put me in an orphanage for 5 months. Then when I was 19 months old, introduced me to the world as her adopted daughter.
But we're still in the 30s and 40s acting mentality, and yet here she is, a single woman adopting a baby. Wasn't that kind of out of keeping?
It was totally out of keeping because of the Hollywood. Well, in the 30s, it was against the law in California for a single woman to adopt.
That's not the Hayes Law you were
yes,
talking. Oh, it
yes.
is. I was going to ask you about
that.
Well,
that was a state law that single women couldn't adopt, you see. And then in the 30s, there had been a lot of 3 important scandals in Hollywood in the late 20s and the early 30s, Fatty Arbuckle being one of them. And the government stepped in and said, if you don't censor your motion pictures, we will. And so the motion picture producers developed their own self-censorship, and that's what the Hayes Code was. They hired Will Hayes, who was Attorney General at the time.
But they put this in the contract, evidently.
That was different. The Hayes Code was general for the entire industry, and then there was a morals code within the stars' contracts.
I see.
That if there was any scandal, they would be dropped from their contract. So it was a whole different world. Today, if this happened, you know, they'd call a press conference and announce it.
Look what we did.
Exactly. But my mother had to keep it secret.
Now that we're in the 90s and you've written your book,
yes.
Did Loretta Young approve?
Of the book?
Yes.
No, unfortunately. We haven't spoken in 8 years. 8 years ago, she thought I was writing a book, and I wasn't.
Oh.
And she asked me to leave her house on Mother's Day, ironically. And I said, all right, I will if that's what you want. But before I go, I want to ask you one thing. Will you ever publicly acknowledge that I am your biological daughter and that Clark Gable is my father? And she said no.
She said no.
No. And still today, she does not publicly acknowledge me, which is one of the reasons I had to write the book, to claim my identity.
I see that, but then you took on the name of Lewis. Why didn't you take on the name of Gable?
I had no, Joan, I had no choice. I was born Judith Young.
Because your mother was a single mother
That's
who
right.
adopted you.
And I didn't see my birth certificate until I was in my mid-20s and a married woman, and my husband had to go down to the Hall of Records and get it for me.
And what did it say?
Well, it said father unknown.
Oh, right.
And
of
mother
course.
Margaret Young. Now, when my mother didn't tell me the truth until I was 31, and my father was long since dead.
But you already knew that you were adopted, so that truth was out.
But you see, I wasn't adopted.
Oh, I see.
Are you confused now?
Yes, I'm confused.
Okay.
No, but that truth was
there was
out.
never a legal adoption. I was raised as you see, a
I
biological mother
Oh.
can't adopt her own child.
But she did, in fact.
No, she announced it.
I see.
She announced it through
I
Luella Parsons,
Well, how
who
did
was
you...
who was a
Luella
right.
Parsons, who worked for the Examiner at that time?
Yes, she was a very, very popular Hollywood columnist.
Yes.
And her word was law, you see.
I see.
So once Luella had announced that this Loretta Young, this movie star, had adopted a child, everybody knew it was a smokescreen, but that was the truth, according to everybody.
I didn't
and
realize-
nobody challenged in those days.
I didn't realize there was no adoption
No
paper.
adoption. Well, no, you can't. Biological mother can't adopt her own child. So there's no adoption papers. Then when she married Tom Lewis, and I was 5, it was convenient for me to have
I
his
see.
name, but he never legally adopted me either.
Oh, you are uncommon.
Indeed. Indeed.
So I see. So nothing legal has taken place.
Not at all.
Except your birth.
That's right.
And that
Correct.
was...
And I had a baptismal, so the only legal document I had was a baptismal certificate. Now, that was, all the names on that was false. My mother made them all up. My baptismal name was Mary Judith Clark, Father William Clark, Mother Margaret Clark. And it's very ironic because what she did was she chose my real father, Clark's father's name, which was William, and my real father's first name for my last name.
I remember reading that. So
Yeah.
it was like a detective in a way. You put all these names
Well, I
together.
had my baptismal certificate, which
But
I
I mean,
thought
you
was
started
real.
figuring these things out.
Well, after I talked to my mother at 31 and she told me the truth, then I had all the information.
She told you the truth, what? That you were in
Well,
fact...
that's a long story, too.
She told you the truth that you were born of her.
Let's go back. Let's go back so we
Because
don't
she wanted...
confuse your viewers, all right?
Okay.
I was raised as an adopted child by my biological mother.
Right.
Okay? When I was 23 and 2 weeks before I was going to be married, I said to my husband, you know, I can't marry you. I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm bringing into my marriage. We want children, you know. And he said, don't worry about it. I know everything there is to know about you. And I said, you do? And he said, oh, yes, Judy, it's common knowledge. Your father's Clark Gable. And that's the first time I'd heard that.
Oh, my God.
So I went to the parish priest who was going to marry us, and I said, you know, I've just found out the most shocking news, that my father's Clark Gable, and I'm going to ask my mother to tell me the truth. And he said, no, don't ask her. She won't tell you. And so I married Joe, and I had my daughter, and we moved to New York, and I began my career
That's
as an
when you
actress.
went-
I had already been an actress, but then I went on Broadway for a year, and then I went into the soap opera, The Secret Store. And during this time, I also went into therapy because I wanted to work through all these issues. And finally, when I was 31, my mother was going away for a year to out of town, out of the country on a trip. And so I flew 3,000 miles, and she picked me up at the airport, and we had dinner, and then we watched television. I kept trying to ask her. Finally, about 2 o'clock in the morning, I did say to her, I need to ask you an important question.
Was she deflecting it,
Absolutely.
do you think? All the way
absolutely.
along, all night?
Yes.
She kind of had this
It
feeling
took
what
all
was
this-
going to come on.
Yeah. She knew why I had arrived.
Yes.
And I felt very sorry for her because it was very, very difficult. She even got sick to her stomach before she told me.
But she did tell you.
She did.
And what did she tell you exactly?
Exactly?
Yes.
All right, I said, Mom, I must ask you this question. Is Clark Gable my father? And she said, strangely enough, she said, would you like him to be? And I said, yes, very much. Everything I've heard about him is that he was a wonderful man. And she said, well, he was your father.
Oh, she did.
And then she told me the whole story about how they met on the film of Call of the Wild, and they fell in love, and
So
she
this-
was pregnant, and the whole story of my birth and how she had to hide me. And
So it's not your fantasy.
not at all,
And
it's
it was,
the truth.
And it was all corroborated then by your
Absolutely.
research.
Absolutely.
Now, but she said she would never acknowledge it publicly.
That's
Is that
correct.
Okay.
That's
Now,
correct.
I think we got it all straight.
got the whole story
that
now?
we've gotten to this point, how did you have the courage to write the book when your mother says, I'm not going to talk about it publicly, like it's a mother-daughter thing?
Yes. Well, you know, I have a daughter myself, and I have 2 beautiful grandsons. And it was very important for me to give my daughter her history and my grandsons too. I wanted to stop the secret from going down to my daughter's generation and my grandchildren's generation. So that gave me the courage to tell the truth and to be whole. You know, it's very dangerous for people to have to carry family secrets.
What about the rest of the family? You haven't spoken to your mother. What about your aunts?
No, haven't heard from them in 8 years either.
What else would they be? Cousins?
So, yes, some cousins I'm very close to. Some I haven't heard from.
It's very interesting how the whole thing, all of a sudden, the family just stops.
Totally.
Was your mother like the matriarch after your
My
grandmother
grandmother,
died?
my darling grandmother, my mother's mother was
Gladys.
the matriarch. Gladys Royal
Gladys.
Belzer.
I
She was
used to-
marvelous.
I used to see Gladys at Mass every day,
I
sitting in
know.
the front row.
I know.
And Rosalind Russell would be sitting across the aisle,
know.
and Gladys would be sitting with her daughters.
I know.
And
She's an extraordinary woman.
and at that time,
I write the whole history of the family.
which is really great because you hear everything about Hollywood. You hear about the Hollywood kids,
Yes.
the parties that they had,
Right.
the proms. I looked at your prom pictures, and I was going through that at Westlake the same time you were
Yeah.
doing that at Marymount. But the idea that your mother and your grandmother were such strong women
Oh, very.
and manipulative women,
Yes.
obviously.
Very much so.
Do you feel you're
Well-
the same way with your daughter?
That's a good question. No, I'm not, Joan. What I was aware of that made life difficult for me, mainly it was not having the truth. The truth sets you free, and secrets are very, very destructive
We
to
have
relationships.
We have to leave, but before we go, if you had this to do over again, would you do it just in exactly the same way? Would you leave your mother out of the situation, or would you try to work her into it somehow as an approval of writing the book?
I waited as long as I did to write the book because I wanted her approval. I didn't want to have to give up my mother to gain my identity.
Yes.
But unfortunately, that's the way it turned out. So that's the way it had to be.
Well, I think I know things will change. I have faith, and I think.
I hope so. Where there's life, there's hope. Huh,
Yes,
Joan?
exactly. And I
Okay.
appreciate your coming on with
My
us
pleasure.
today.
I enjoyed it very
I've
much.
been
It's
wanting
fun.
to talk to you because
Thank
it really brought back so many memories of my high school days,
Right.
too.
Right, they were good days.
Thanks. Don't go away because Bob Biggs will be back with us, and he's going to talk about Slash Records.
I'm very
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and we're back with record producer Bob Biggs, who's the president of Slash Records. Their label has all these hip musicians like Los Lobos, Faith No More, L7, Soul Coughing, Grant Lee Buffalo, and Bob, along with these names. How did you get into the biz?
Well, I don't know. I guess it's sort of like everyone that actually gets into doing this kind of stuff, you kind of fall into it. It's not like you train, go to school or college or anything like that.
That's what I was going to ask.
Start a record company, yeah.
Did you go to college?
I went to college, yeah. I'm a human being. I went to UCLA.
Were you born here?
Yeah, I was born in Los Angeles.
Oh, so you're part of this genre.
I'm part of the stench of LA.
Yeah, good. So that's how you could become a record producer.
I guess so, yeah, it sort of fits.
Well, what did happen? You didn't go to school to become a president of a record company.
No, I didn't. I went to school to play sports, and then I got hurt, and then I sort of pursued my artistic side, and was an artist for a while, painted and all that, and then met up with some friends of mine, Steve Samioff and Claude Bessie, who were starting a magazine called Slash Magazine. And I got involved in it a little about, I don't know, 5 or 6 issues into it.
What were you doing? Were you doing the graphics? Or
no, Steve was doing the graphics.
Steve loves to do the graphics.
Yeah, Steve's going to be doing the graphics for sure. And Claude was doing the writing, and I was doing the business.
So, you were?
Well, of sorts. I'm, I don't consider myself a very good sort of businessman, but doing a magazine with a circulation of, 5,000 or 6,000 didn't take a whole lot of, acumen.
And the magazine was called Slash.
It was called Slash.
How'd you name it? I mean, it's like such a violent name.
Well, it was mostly about punk matters, punk rock, punk culture, that sort of revolution against the Eagles and a nice, comfortable singer-songwriter kind of culture. And I'm sure that's where Steve came up with the name. I didn't come up with the name.
I see.
That was Steve's thing.
Because it still has that kind of violence against about it. Slash. Is it heavy metal? Do you have heavy metal bands?
Well, we have some kind of heavy metal-ish bands. It's hard to say these days because they all tend to just sort of fold into one another, all these different kind of rock genres. But in the beginning, it was certainly punk, mostly punk rock.
Now, it's lasted a long time. A record company lasting a long time and being small and independent is quite a rarity.
Right. Well, it's been 15 years.
So long?
And we were sort of the first label to hook up with a major label for distribution and stuff and still retain our ownership and independence.
So how does that work? Is that a unique situation?
Well, 1 second.
1 second, I'll tell
I
you.
use up the airtime here, but it's not as unique now as it once was. I think we were the first to do it, or one of the first to do it. We are responsible for all of our product and all of our the artistic side and the marketing plans and all that sort of stuff. And we distribute through a very large company which can disseminate the product.
But a lot of different large companies, or just
no,
one
Warner
large?
Brothers. Warner Brothers in the U.S.,
I
Hologram
see.
foreign for the most part is the way it works.
Now, we talked about some of these names that you have. Los Lobos, where does that name come from?
Well, in Spanish it means the wolves, and it was obviously picked by the band, and they're from East Los Angeles.
So, and we have a clip
Right.
of one of their
Videos?
yes,
Right.
one of their videos. Thank you. And it's an animation, I think you said.
Yeah, it's an animated. It was the only animated clip they did. I think we were really fortunate to get this fellow whose name I can't remember at this point, but
so let's
comes from Eastern Europe, and it's very, very
Eastern
good.
Europe and East LA.
Yeah,
Fits together
exactly.
very well.
Excellent.
Okay, we'll see
Nice
that
segue.
right now. Just a minute of Los Lobos. Bob, do you have kind of artistic input in something like this?
On occasion. It depends on the band. Some bands really like to take control of their own, what they consider their own product, and others want you to help them out. So,
but
it depends.
If you've discovered a band, we'll go back to the very beginning. How do you actually discover a band?
Well, Slash is not just me. Obviously, it's 15 people, two of which are people that go and look for bands.
What do they call those people?
A&R people? That's what they're called. No one knows what A&R means.
Oh, you mean it's just two?
I think I mean artists and repertoire or something like that. But anyway, I have two people that do that, and they usually find the band, and then I go out. I'm more of the marketing kind of person. I'm the one that figures out how to put it into a market.
Do you have to like it, or do you take their word for it?
Well, Slash is a small enough company that we have to keep, it's pretty much a family, and everyone has to have pretty much a consensus about a band that we're doing.
Do those A&R people turn over?
They do at big labels. I've had mine for 8 years, this one, and the one before that for 5 years.
Because I thought it was something that people came and go.
It is in the big companies, because it's a high profile. Everyone's got a personal employment contract with the corporation and like that, but we're, like I said, we're more of a family kind of
Now, one of the first bands that you signed is this.
The Germs.
The Germs is this poster behind us,
right?
Which And
this is Darby Crash, was his name, and Darby committed suicide in 1980.
Soon after this was
soon
1978.
After the record. He's a fairly troubled guy, but a brilliant writer, I thought. And anyway, that's a sad story of that.
Did that put you on the map, so to speak?
The Germs, I don't think so. I think right after that, X was a Slash band that did well. The Blasters.
Were you in X? Did you play in it? Do you play an instrument?
I play an instrument, but I wasn't in X.
You weren't in it. Were you in any of these bands?
No. I was in one band, Blind Mother Justice in 1966.
Well, we're back to where we get these names again. One of those names is L7.
L7.
What does that mean?
These girls are very difficult. Women are very difficult to sort of pin down about a lot of things. They have a mystery about what they do. I don't know. I know that L and 7 makes a square, which in the 50s meant you were lame. So.
Lame?
Yeah, so, square. He's square or something like that. I mean, that's the only one that I've ever been able to come up with.
So do you have more all-women bands?
Oh, God, if I miss someone, I'm going to get killed.
Well, then let's see
I don't
this.
think so.
Let's see this L7.
Okay.
We have a video from L7.
Everyone should see L7 once in their life.
Okay, we'll see it now.
Okay.
You say that L7 makes a square. Those women are certainly not square.
No, they're not. But I think that's what the whole sort of joke is.
So
we're obviously not square, but here we're square.
You missed this other group that you were talking about. Other women, violent femmes.
Right. Except the violent femmes are 3 guys.
Oh, they're not women.
No,
FEMMES.
No. Yeah. No. That's another backward joke. And actually, they're now they've moved on to another label. So it's there's a constant attrition rate when you go to sign bands.
Do you think you ever get too old to be hip and know what's happening? I mean, do you think that ever happens?
What are you trying to say? I'm not sure. Well, yeah, some people I would imagine, but I don't feel I'm too old yet.
No, I'm not saying it about you, but I mean, do you think can it happen in the record business?
Yeah, but I think if you go, I mean, I like the whole scene. I mean, it's the youth. They're making the most strongest expression, all of that sort of stuff. So I think you have to give up your interest and passion before you get stupid.
Well, do you think mainstream is a dirty word? I mean, would your company ever become mainstream? Right now, it's not.
No, I think alternative is a dirty word these days. It used to be that alternative meant something. But as it became assimilated and became part of large corporations, alternative lost its meaning, and now mainstream is alternative. So
you think mainstream is better?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes?
Something to aspire to, I think.
What do you look for when you go out?
I don't go out that much. Like I said, I have these people that go out and run bands down, and we have sort of a consensus about whether we think that they're pushing culture forward. They're doing something in a cultural sense rather than simply singing about love.
Well, I think we pushed culture forward today.
I think so.
I think we had a really good talk about alternative versus mainstream. I didn't realize what's happening, and I guess
they're sort of ships in the night.
Yeah, well, we're ships in the night too, because I think we met 20 years ago, and now here we are. Well, 15 years ago, and here we are. Thanks, Bob Biggs, for being with us, and thanks to all of you for watching us. Keep riding, 520 South Grand, 8th floor, and we'll see you next time on the Joan Quinn Profiles.